3 months from now, I'd be wearing a wedding dress that cost more than my entire college tuition, marrying a man I barely knew who had the most irritatingly perfect smile I'd ever seen in my life. But in that moment, sitting in the most intimidating boardroom in Manhattan, all I could think was, please let this be a prank. The Mont Blanc pen glided across the contract with a sound that seemed to seal my fate. I watched, slack-jawed, as my father signed each page as if he were simply approving a purchase order for construction materials, not trading his only daughter as collateral for a failed business deal. Done. He looked up, and for the first time in weeks, his eyes didn't carry those deep shadows beneath them. It's settled, Valentina. Valentina Cortez, 28 years old, award-winning architect, and apparently bargaining chip. Dad. My voice came out thinner than I would have liked. Tell me you didn't just sign away my marriage certificate to a complete stranger. From across the mahogany table that probably cost more than my apartment, Augustus Pemberton folded his hands over his prominent belly, his gold cufflinks reflecting the cold light from the crystal chandelier. The patriarch of Pemberton Holdings had that air of someone accustomed to buying everything: companies, buildings, politicians, and apparently daughters-in-law. Complete stranger is an exaggeration, my dear. His drawling voice dripped with condescension. You and Theodore met at the New Year's Eve gala at the Commerce Club. I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly saw my own brain. He spilled champagne on my purse and didn't even apologize, just smiled like it was some kind of favor and walked away. Theodore has a strong personality. Augustus adjusted the knot of his Italian silk tie. But he's an excellent match. Harvard graduate, MBA from London, fluent in 5 languages. And has the empathy of a rock, I completed, crossing my arms. My father finally looked at me, and there was something in his eyes, desperation, perhaps guilt, that made my stomach churn. Val, Cortez Construction is on the verge of bankruptcy. His voice trembled. That residential complex project. The suppliers sued us, the investors pulled out, and he ran his hand over his face. I put our company up as collateral for a loan I can't repay. I felt the air escape from my lungs. How much? $15 million. The room seemed to spin. $15 million. The legacy my grandfather built brick by brick, that my father expanded with sweat and dedication, that I dreamed of modernizing with my sustainable projects, all crumbling like a house of cards. And Mr. Pemberton here, I could barely form the words, is offering to settle the debt in exchange for me. In exchange for a matrimonial alliance between our families. Augustus corrected, as if that made any difference. It's a perfectly civilized arrangement. Your father obtains the necessary capital to save the company. I ensure a suitable marriage for my son before he turns 35, and I become what exactly? A promissory note in bride format? For the first time, Augustus Pemberton looked genuinely surprised by my reaction, as if it had never occurred to him that 21st century women might have opinions about their own marriages. You become part of one of the most influential families in the country, my dear. You'll have access to unlimited resources, be able to develop any architectural project you desire, live in a 20,000 square foot estate in Greenwich. How wonderful. My voice dripped with sarcasm. And all I need to do is marry a man who probably doesn't even know my last name. Cortez. A deep, velvety voice cut through the air behind me. Valentina Isabel Cortez. Graduated with honors from Columbia's Graduate School of Architecture, winner of the Young Architect Award in 2022, specialized in sustainable design with a focus on affordable housing. Prefers black coffee, no sugar, reads psychological thrillers before bed, and has an irrational soft spot for brutalist buildings despite designing much prettier things. I spun in my chair so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash. Theodore Pemberton was leaning against the doorframe like he was posing for a GQ cover shoot. Perfectly tousled dark hair, honey-colored eyes that seemed far too amused for the situation, navy blue suit that probably cost more than my car. and that damned corner-of-the-mouth smile that made it seem like he knew a joke nobody else understood. "You—" I swallowed hard. "You've been investigating my life?" "Naturally." He entered the room with that irritating confidence of someone who'd never had a door closed in their face. "If I'm going to marry someone, I prefer to know who I'm dealing with. You'd be surprised what you can discover with a good investigation team and unlimited access to Google." How romantic. I stood, because remaining seated while he approached seemed like a tactical disadvantage. "Stalked my social media, and think you know me. I know you hate when people call architecture putting up walls." He stopped a few steps from me, and I hated that I had to look up to meet his eyes. "I know you started college wanting to study medicine, but dropped out first semester because you realized you preferred building homes to fixing people. I know your favorite band is Florence and the Machine, and that you cry every time you watch Toy Story 3. My face burned. "That doesn't mean anything. It means that, unlike what you think, I'm not completely indifferent to the person I'm going to spend the next few years with." His golden eyes studied me with disconcerting intensity. "This marriage may be a business arrangement, Valentina, but it doesn't have to be a prison." "Next few years?" The penny finally dropped. "Exactly how long is this arrangement supposed to last?" Augustus cleared his throat behind us. "The contract stipulates a minimum period of 3 years of matrimony. After that, you're free to renegotiate the terms. 3 years, 1,095 days, chained to an arrogant stranger who probably had a closet bigger than my entire apartment. And if I refuse?" I looked at my father, even though I already knew the answer. He lowered his eyes. "Cortez Construction declares bankruptcy next week. 100 employees lose their jobs. Your grandfather built that company with his own hands, Val. It's all that's left of him." Guilt was a snake coiling around my chest, squeezing. I thought of the familiar faces at the office. Mr. Joaquin, who'd worked with my grandfather since the 80s, Mariana from accounting who had 3 young children, Robert from the construction department who was saving money for his daughter's college. "This is emotional blackmail," I whispered. "It's reality." My father finally met my gaze. "And I'm sorry, sweetheart. If there were any other way." Theodore moved into my field of vision, those golden eyes softening minimally. "For what it's worth, I don't intend to be a terrible husband. You'll have your own wing of the estate, complete freedom to continue working. And I won't." He paused, choosing his words. "I don't expect anything from you beyond occasional public appearances and monthly family dinners." How generous. Sarcasm was my only defense at that moment. A husband who'll barely notice me. Every girl's dream. Something flashed in his eyes. Amusement. Challenge. "I said I didn't expect anything. I didn't say I wouldn't notice you." My heart jumped in a way I absolutely hated. I need time to think." "You have 24 hours. Augustus consulted his Patek Philippe. "The wedding is scheduled for 3 months from now. Enough time to plan a proper ceremony and avoid unnecessary gossip about urgency." 3 months. I laughed, but there was no humor in my voice. "Of course. Why not 3 days since we're selling my life anyway?" I grabbed my purse, the same one Theodore had ruined with champagne, now that I thought about it, and headed for the door. "Valentina." His voice stopped me at the threshold. When I looked over my shoulder, Theodore had his hands in his pockets, posture relaxed, but there was something serious in his expression. "I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just another piece on my father's chessboard, too." "The difference," I replied, gripping my purse strap tightly so my hands wouldn't shake, "is that you seem perfectly comfortable being moved." I left before he could respond, my heels echoing through the marble corridor of Pemberton Holdings like a countdown. 24 hours to decide the rest of my life. As I waited for the elevator, I grabbed my phone and opened the chat with my best friend. "Me. Need a bottle of wine and your immediate presence, preferably with chocolate. Marina." What level of disaster are we talking about? Scale of 1 to, I canceled my wedding. Me. More like, I got sold into an arranged marriage with Manhattan's most arrogant heir. Marina. Marina, I'm getting 2 bottles. The elevator arrived, the doors opening to reveal the mirror covering the back wall. I looked at my reflection. Dark brown hair and a professional bun that was already coming undone. White blouse wrinkled from gripping the chair arms so tightly. Green eyes wide with a mixture of panic and revolt. In 3 months, that woman would be wearing a wedding ring. In 3 months, she'd be Valentina Pemberton. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the lobby button, and as I descended 23 floors, all I could think about was Theodore's expression when he said he wasn't the villain of the story. The problem was, I also didn't know if I was the heroine, or just the damsel in distress who needed to save herself. Spoiler, I was going to discover I was both. But I wouldn't know that until much, much later. Marina's apartment smelled like lavender candles and bad decisions. I was currently drowning in both. Let me get this straight. My best friend since freshman year poured another generous glass of Merlot, her curly red hair catching the lamplight. Your dad essentially sold you to the Pembertons like this is a Jane Austen novel, except with more legal paperwork and less charming countryside. That's actually a pretty accurate summary. I took a large gulp of wine. It tasted like expensive regret. And this Theodore guy, the one who ruined your Prada bag last year, it was a knockoff. Still, Marina pointed her glass at me accusingly. He's been stalking your entire existence and thinks that makes him less creepy? I groaned, sinking deeper into her overstuffed couch. He knew about Toy Story 3, Marina. Toy Story 3. Okay, that's actually disturbing. She paused. Wait, is he hot? That's not the point. So he is hot. I threw a pillow at her, which she expertly dodged while laughing. You're supposed to be helping me figure out how to get out of this, not evaluating his appearance. I'm multitasking. Marina's expression softened as she settled beside me, tucking her legs underneath her. Real talk though, Val. What are you going to do? The question I'd been avoiding for the past 4 hours. I stared into my wine glass like it held answers instead of just alcohol. If I say no, 100 people lose their jobs. My grandfather's legacy crumbles. My dad... I swallowed hard. I've never seen him look so defeated, Mar. It would destroy him. And if you say yes? I become Mrs. Theodore Pemberton, live in a mansion that probably has more bathrooms than my building has apartments, and spend 3 years pretending to be happily married to a man who thinks investigating my life is normal courtship behavior. Marina was quiet for a moment, swirling her wine thoughtfully. You know what the really messed up part is? In any other context, a guy doing that much research because he actually wants to know you would be kind of... sweet? I shot her a look. Whose side are you on? Yours. Always. She squeezed my hand. Which is why I'm going to say something you won't like. This Theodore guy? He didn't have to learn about you. He could have just shown up to the wedding like it was a business merger, which it basically is. But he knows your favorite band, Val. He knows you cry at Pixar movies. That's... something. It's creepy. Or it's a guy trying to make an impossible situation slightly less terrible. Marina shrugged. I'm just saying, maybe he's not the enemy here. Maybe you both got screwed by your father's choices and you're just stuck in it together. My phone buzzed before I could respond. Unknown number. Unknown. This is Theodore. Marina seems like a good friend. She's right, by the way, about most of it. I nearly dropped my phone. What the hell? I showed Marina the screen, my hands shaking slightly. How did he? Unknown. You're at 247 West 15th Street, apartment 4B. The wine is a 2019 Merlot from Marina's trip to Napa. Excellent choice. And you've gone through half the bottle in 2 hours. Also, you're wearing your stress outfit, that oversized Columbia hoodie you've had since grad school. Oh my God! I jumped up, rushing to Marina's window. Sure enough, across the street, a sleek black Mercedes was parked with its lights off. In the driver's seat, I could just make out a figure with a phone glowing against his face. He waved. Marina appeared beside me, wineglass in hand. Okay, that's creepy. My phone buzzed again. Theodore, before you call the police, I'm not stalking you. I wanted to make sure you got home safely. Well, to your friend's home. Your apartment is in Bushwick, which is a 40-minute subway ride this time of night. Me. This is literally the definition of stalking, Theodore. This is making sure my future wife doesn't get mugged while processing our engagement. There's a difference. Me. We're not engaged. I haven't said yes. Theodore. Haven't said no either. Can I come up? We should talk. Actually talk, not whatever that disaster in my father's office was. I looked at Marina, who raised her eyebrows in a "your funeral" expression. Me. Fine. Apartment 4B. But Marina stays, and if you try anything weird, she has pepper spray. Theodore. I'd expect nothing less. 3 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Marina opened it while I tried to look casual, and not like I'd been panic drinking for hours. Theodore Pemberton looked unfairly good for someone who'd spent the evening sitting in a car. He'd ditched the suit jacket, and his white dress shirt was rolled up to his forearms in a way that should be illegal. He carried a paper bag that smelled suspiciously like Chinese food. Peace offering. He held up the bag. Szechuan chicken, vegetable lo mein, and those scallion pancakes from Xi'an Famous Foods. Marina's favorite based on her Instagram posts. And for you, he produced another container. Mapo tofu from that place in Flushing you visited 6 times last month. Marina took the bag, eyes wide. Okay, the stalking is still creepy, but the food almost makes up for it. Almost, I emphasized, but my traitorous stomach growled. Theodore's lips quirked. Can we talk? Please? I nodded toward the couch, and we all sat, Marina strategically positioning herself between us like a referee. Why are you really here? I asked, proud that my voice stayed steady. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for the first time, I saw something genuine in his expression, something almost vulnerable. Because I remember what it's like to have your life decided for you without any say in it, and I remember how much it sucks. He met my eyes. I was 23 when my father informed me I'd be taking over Pemberton Holdings whether I wanted to or not. I'd been accepted to volunteer with Doctors Without Borders, had my flights booked to Kenya, and he just erased it all with one phone call. The bitterness in his voice was real, raw. So you just gave up? I asked quietly. Followed his script? I made a deal, 3 years working for him, learning the business. After that, I'd be free to do whatever I wanted. His laugh was hollow. That was 12 years ago. Turns out leaving isn't as easy as you think when you're holding the livelihoods of thousands of employees in your hands. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you? Poor little rich boy trapped in his empire? No. He shook his head. It's supposed to help you understand that I get it. The weight of responsibility. The impossible choice between your dreams and everyone else's survival. And I'm telling you, he looked at me intently. If you marry me, I'll make sure those 3 years are bearable. Maybe even good. You'll have freedom, resources to do the work you actually care about. And at the end, we both walk away with what we need. And what do you need? Marina asked, surprising us both. Theodore glanced at her, then back to me. To finally satisfy my father's obsession with legacy long enough that he'll let me breathe. And maybe, he paused, maybe to not do this completely alone. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility and fear. I need the full 24 hours, I finally said. He nodded, standing. That's fair. At the door, he turned back. For what it's worth, Valentina, I think you'd make an incredible wife, just probably not mine. And with that devastatingly honest statement, he left. Marina immediately turned to me. Okay, So we're definitely saying yes, right? What? Why? Because that man just laid his entire soul bare in my living room, brought us amazing food, and somehow made an arranged marriage sound almost romantic. She grinned. Plus, you've been unconsciously touching your lips since he smiled at you. I jerked my hand away from my mouth. Have not. Have too. Val, I'm not saying this is a fairy tale, but maybe it's not a tragedy either. She squeezed my shoulder. Maybe it's just a beginning. I looked out the window at the empty spot where his car had been and wondered if Marina was right. Wondered if maybe, just maybe, Theodore Pemberton wasn't my prison sentence. He was my unexpected escape route. I said yes at 3:47 a.m. Not in person, not dramatically. Just a simple text message to the number Theodore had used, sent from Marina's guest bedroom while she snored peacefully in the next room. Me. Okay. 3 years. But I have conditions. His response came in less than 30 seconds. Did this man ever sleep? Theodore. Name them. Me. 1. I keep working. Full time. My projects, my clients, my schedule. Theodore. Done. Me. 2. Separate bedrooms, non-negotiable. Theodore. Already arranged. You'll have the entire East Wing. Me. 3. No fake affection in private. Save the performance for public. There was a longer pause this time. The typing bubble appeared and disappeared 3 times before his response came through. Theodore. This one, I can't promise. My heart did something stupid in my chest. Me. Excuse me? Theodore. I can promise not to force anything, but I can't promise not to develop real feelings, Valentina. And I won't ask you to suppress yours if they happen either. Fake marriage. Real feelings. That's the risk we're both taking. I stared at my phone for a full minute, unsure how to respond to that level of honesty at almost 4 a.m. Me. Fine. But if you fall in love with me, that's your problem. Theodore. Deal. Same goes for you, by the way. Me. Not happening. Theodore. We'll see. Sleep well, future Mrs. Pemberton. We have a wedding to plan. Turns out, planning a society wedding in 3 months was like designing a skyscraper in 3 weeks. Theoretically possible, but absolutely insane. No, no, no. Genevieve Hartley, Manhattan's most sought-after wedding planner, dramatically swept her hand across the fabric samples spread on the conference table at Pemberton Holdings. Valentina, darling, you cannot wear ivory. It completely washes you out. I don't want to wear white at all, I muttered, examining the architectural plans for a community center I was designing in the Bronx. Can't I just wear a nice pantsuit? Genevieve looked like I'd suggested getting married in a garbage bag. Theodore, sitting across from me at the table, didn't even look up from his laptop. She's kidding, Genevieve. Valentina has a delightful sense of humor. I'm really not. She really is. He finally met my eyes, and there was that amused glint again. But she'll wear the dress because she made a deal, and Valentina Cortez keeps her promises. How dare he be right? Fine. I shoved aside my sketches. But nothing too princessy. I want clean lines, modern, sophisticated. Think Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, not Cinderella. Genevieve's eyes lit up. Oh, now we're talking. I know exactly the designer. Minimalist chic, architectural silhouette. It'll be stunning. See? Theodore's voice dropped lower, meant just for me. Compromise isn't so bad. Says the man who doesn't have to wear Spanx for 8 hours. His lips twitched. I could, if it would make you feel better. Despite myself, I laughed. It surprised us both. The next 2 weeks became a blur of cake tastings, venue tours, and increasingly elaborate lies to explain our whirlwind romance to curious society reporters. The official story: we'd been secretly dating for 6 months, fell madly in love, and decided life was too short to wait. The truth: we were 2 people learning to be friends while planning to legally bind ourselves together. Your hand is shaking. Theodore's voice was quiet as we posed for engagement photos in Central Park. his arm around my waist feeling both foreign and oddly natural. "Photographer's watching," I whispered back through my smile. "He's adjusting his lens. You can drop the act for 5 seconds." His thumb traced a small circle on my hip, a gesture so unconsciously intimate it made me catch my breath. "Talk to me. Real talk." I looked up at him. Really looked. In the golden afternoon light, his honey eyes were softer, concerned, real. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "What if I can't do this? What if 3 years turns into a lifetime of pretending and I forget who I actually am?" "Then I'll remind you." His voice was fierce, certain, every day if I have to. "You're Valentina Cortez, the woman who designs buildings that make people feel safe and hopeful, who cries at animated movies and drinks terrible coffee because you're too stubborn to admit you need sugar, who's sacrificing her freedom for people she'll never meet because that's who you are." He paused. "And that's not something you can lose, not in 3 years, not ever." "Mr. Pemberton, Ms. Cortez, perfect," the photographer called out. "Hold that pose. The way you're looking at each other is absolutely perfect." We weren't posing. We'd forgotten he existed. "Okay?" Theodore asked softly. "Yeah." I managed a genuine smile. "Okay." The breaking point came 3 weeks before the wedding. I was working late at my studio, a converted warehouse space in Brooklyn I shared with 2 other architects, when Theodore showed up unannounced with Thai food and a bottle of wine. "How did you even know I was here?" I asked, but accepted the food because I'd forgotten lunch. Again. "You always work late on Wednesdays. Marina mentioned you forget to eat when you're on a deadline." He settled onto my workbench, looking completely out of place in his 3-piece suit among my drafting papers and model buildings. "Show me what you're working on." I hesitated, then pulled up the 3D rendering on my computer. Affordable housing development in Queens. 60 units, community garden, shared workspace for residents who work from home. The developer is fighting me on the budget for solar panels, but they're non-negotiable because sustainable energy reduces long-term costs for families who are already stretched thin. He leaned forward, studying the design. "This is brilliant, Valentina. The way you've created private spaces while maintaining community flow. It's really beautiful." Something in my chest loosened. "You actually understand architecture." "I almost minored in it at Harvard, before my father decided engineering was more practical." He traced a finger along the screen, following the building's lines. "What if Pemberton Holdings funded the solar installation as a wedding gift to the community? Anonymous donation." I stared at him. That's almost $200,000. Consider it an investment in my wife's vision." He said it so casually, like spending that kind of money was nothing. Maybe for him it was. "Unless it would compromise your professional integrity." "No, I shook my head, overwhelmed. "Theodore, why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made the air feel thin. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a business arrangement for me. His voice was rough, honest. "And I think maybe it has for you too." My phone buzzed. Marina's text lit up the screen. "Remember, fake marriage, real feelings." Called it. I looked at Theodore, at this impossible man who'd invaded my life and somehow made it better, and realized with startling clarity that Marina had been right all along. I was in so much trouble. "Yeah," I whispered, "maybe it has." His smile could have lit up all of Manhattan. "Good." He hopped off the workbench, heading for the door. "Because I'd really like to kiss you at our wedding, and I'd prefer if it didn't feel like a business transaction." He left before I could respond, leaving me alone with Thai food, wine, and the terrifying realization that I might actually be falling for my fake fiancé. 3 weeks until the wedding. And suddenly, I couldn't wait. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be intimate. 50 people, Augustus had promised. A casual Friday evening at the Pemberton estate in Greenwich to prepare for Saturday's main event. Casual, apparently, meant a string quartet, ice sculptures, and enough champagne to float a yacht. "Remind me again why we couldn't just order pizza," I muttered to Marina, tugging at the emerald cocktail dress Theodore had sent over. It fit perfectly, which was almost annoying. "Because you're marrying into American royalty, babe. Pizza is for us peasants." She adjusted her own dress, looking unfairly gorgeous as usual. "Now smile. Your future mother-in-law is approaching, and she looks like she eats souls for breakfast." Vivian Pemberton glided toward us like a swan made of ice and judgment. Everything about her was sharp. Cheekbones, eyes, the diamond necklace that probably cost more than my student loans. Valentina. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely. I've been meaning to have a word with you privately." Marina squeezed my hand before diplomatically vanishing, leaving me alone with the woman who clearly wished her son was marrying literally anyone else. "Of course, Mrs. Pemberton." "Vivian, please. We're about to be family, after all." She guided me toward the terrace, away from the crowd. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of dying leaves and expensive perfume. "I'll be direct. I know why you're really marrying Theodore." My stomach dropped. "I don't know what you... Please." She waved a manicured hand dismissively. "Augustus told me everything. The debt, the arrangement, all of it. He thinks he's being so clever, securing Theodore's future while helping your father." Her gaze was steel. "But I know my son. He's developing feelings for you, real ones." I care about him too," I said carefully. "That's what concerns me." Vivian's voice dropped. "Theodore is gentle-hearted beneath all that bravado. He wanted to be a doctor, did you know that? Save lives in impoverished countries. Augustus crushed that dream, and Theodore never quite recovered." She studied me with unsettling intensity. "If you hurt him when this arrangement ends, if you take his money and his name and then discard him like some used contract, I will destroy everything you've built. Your reputation, your career, your father's company." "Do we understand each other?" Before I could respond, Theodore's voice cut through the tension. "Mother." He appeared beside me, his hand immediately finding the small of my back. "I believe dinner is being served. Wouldn't want your carefully planned seating chart to go to waste." Vivian's mask slipped back into place. "Of course, darling. Valentina and I were just getting acquainted." She disappeared back inside, leaving a trail of Chanel No. 5. "What did she say to you?" Theodore's jaw was tight. "Just mother-in-law things, threats, intimidation, the usual." I tried for levity, but my hands were shaking. He turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine. "Valentina. She's right, though." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "You are gentle-hearted. And this whole thing is insane. We barely know each other. And tomorrow we're getting married. And what if..." "Hey." His hands cupped my face, thumbs brushing my cheeks. "Look at me. What if we stop with the what-ifs and just try, really try? Not as a business deal, not as an obligation, but as two people who actually like each other and want to see where this goes." That wasn't the agreement. Screw the agreement. His voice was fierce. "I meant what I said at your studio. This stopped being fake for me weeks ago. Maybe it never was." He pressed his forehead to mine. "Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too." I did. God help me, I did. But before I could answer, Augustus's booming voice echoed from inside. "Everyone, a toast to the happy couple." Theodore groaned. Terrible timing, as always. But his eyes held a question, a hope that made my chest ache. "Later," I promised. "We'll talk, really talk." Inside, 50 pairs of eyes watched as we took our places at the head table. Augustus stood, champagne glass raised, looking absurdly pleased with himself. "To Theodore and Valentina, may your union bring prosperity to both our families for generations to come." Prosperity. Not happiness, not love. Just prosperity. I caught my father's eye across the room. He looked smaller somehow, older, the weight of what he'd done finally settling on his shoulders. He raised his glass with a weak smile. Theodore's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. When I looked at him, he leaned close enough that his breath tickled my ear. Forget them. Forget the deal, the money, all of it. Tomorrow, when you walk down that aisle. His voice was rough with emotion. I want you to know that I'm not standing there because I have to. I'm standing there because I want to. Because somehow, impossibly, you became the best part of this entire mess. My throat tightened. Theodore, you don't have to say anything. Not yet. Just don't run. Please don't run. The vulnerability in his voice nearly broke me. This powerful, confident man reduced to begging me to stay. I won't run, I whispered. I promise. His smile was sunshine breaking through clouds. Dinner passed in a blur of courses I barely tasted, speeches I hardly heard. Marina kept shooting me knowing looks while my father avoided my gaze entirely. Vivian watched Theodore and me like a hawk, cataloguing every touch, every glance. It wasn't until dessert, an elaborate 7-layer creation that probably required a pastry degree, that disaster struck. Excuse me? A woman's voice, clear and cold, cut through the conversation. Everyone turned toward the entrance, where a stunning blonde in a red dress stood, champagne glass in hand. I'm so sorry to interrupt this lovely celebration, but I think everyone should know. Theodore Pemberton is a liar and a coward. Theodore's entire body went rigid beside me. Clarissa, his voice was deadly quiet. What are you doing here? Saving this poor girl from making the biggest mistake of her life. Clarissa sauntered forward, every eye in the room following her. You didn't tell her about us, did you? About how we were engaged 2 years ago until you decided that medical charity work in Africa was more important than our relationship. The room erupted in whispers. I felt like I was watching from underwater, everything muffled and surreal. That's not how it happened, Theodore said through gritted teeth. No! Clarissa's laugh was bitter. You didn't choose Doctors Without Borders over me. Didn't break my heart to go play hero in Kenya before your daddy dragged you back to run the family business. She turned to me, her eyes glittering with malice. He's only marrying you because Augustus ordered him to. Don't fool yourself into thinking this is anything more than duty. The silence was deafening. Everyone waited for my response, for Theodore's denial, for something to make sense of this soap opera unfolding at what should have been a boring rehearsal dinner. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the floor, walked right up to Clarissa until we were face to face. You're absolutely right, I said clearly. This marriage started as a business arrangement. But here's what you don't know. Theodore told me about you, about how you gave him an ultimatum, you or his dreams. And when he chose to help people dying from preventable diseases, you made him feel guilty for having a conscience. Clarissa's face paled. So thank you, I continued, for showing him exactly what selfish love looks like. It makes what we have, messy and complicated as it is, so much more real. I turned back to Theodore, whose expression was a mixture of shock and something that looked suspiciously like pride. Tomorrow I'm walking down that aisle. And yes, this started as a deal. But it's become something else entirely. I took his hand, lacing our fingers together. Something worth fighting for. The room exploded into applause. Clarissa fled, red dress swishing dramatically, and Theodore pulled me into his arms, laughing against my hair. You're incredible, he breathed. I know, I replied, grinning. Now kiss me before your mother has an aneurysm. So he did. And suddenly, tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I didn't sleep the night before my wedding. Not because of nerves, well, not entirely, but because Theodore kept texting me. Theodore, can't sleep, keep thinking about tomorrow. Me. Traditionally, the groom isn't supposed to contact the bride before the wedding. Bad luck. Theodore, we're already doing everything backwards. Might as well commit to it. Me. Fair point. What are you thinking about? Theodore, how I'm the luckiest bastard alive, and how terrified I am that you'll come to your senses before noon. Me. Little late for that. I defended you in front of 50 people in your psycho ex. I'm pot-committed now. Theodore. Did you just use a poker term to describe our marriage? Me. Would you prefer a construction metaphor? We've laid the foundation, now we're raising the walls. Theodore. I prefer this. I'm falling in love with you, and tomorrow I get to promise forever. Even if forever is just 3 years, I'll take it. I stared at my phone for a full 5 minutes, heart hammering against my ribs. Me. Theodore. Theodore. Too much? I told you I can't promise not to develop feelings. Me. Not too much, just perfectly timed. As always, you terrible man. Theodore. See you at the altar, future Mrs. Pemberton. Try to get some sleep. Me. You too, future Mr. Cortez Pemberton. Theodore. Did you just hyphenate our names? Me. You bet I did. Welcome to the 21st century. Theodore. I wouldn't have it any other way. The morning of the wedding was chaos wrapped in tulle and hairspray. Marina had appointed herself my personal emotional support system, which mostly involved shoving coffee and pastries at me while I got transformed into a bride. Okay, real talk time. She perched on the arm of the salon chair while someone worked on my hair. How are we feeling? Scale of 1 to, I'm about to fake my own death and flee to Mexico. Honestly? I met her eyes in the mirror. Like, this is the craziest, most insane, most absolutely right thing I've ever done. Her grin was triumphant. I knew it! You love him! I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Val, I've known you since we were 18. I've seen you fall in love with buildings, with design concepts, with that coffee shop in Brooklyn that closed after 2 months. She squeezed my shoulder. I've never seen you fall in love with a person. Until now. Before I could respond, my father appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in his morning suit. Can I have a moment with my daughter? Marina squeezed my hand and disappeared, leaving us alone. Dad stood there, fidgeting with his cufflinks, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Valentina, His voice cracked. I'm sorry. For all of it. For putting you in this position. For being weak. For... Dad. I stood, carefully navigating the dress. If you hadn't done what you did, I would never have met Theodore. Not really. I would have just been the girl he spilled champagne on. I took his hands. And yeah, this started as a mess, but sometimes the best things come from the worst circumstances. He pulled me into a hug, careful not to crush the dress. When did you become so wise? Probably around the time I decided to marry a stranger to save your company. I pulled back, smiling through tears. But he's not a stranger anymore. He's Theodore, and that's enough. The Pemberton estate had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, strings of lights woven through the garden, a glass pavilion overlooking the Long Island Sound. 300 guests, because Augustus couldn't do anything small, filled white chairs arranged in perfect rows. I stood at the entrance, arm linked through my father's, and suddenly the enormity of it all hit me. In 5 minutes, I would walk down that aisle. In 10 minutes, I would be married. In 15 minutes, my entire life would be different. Ready? Dad asked softly. The music swelled. The guests stood. And there, at the end of the aisle, was Theodore. He looked devastating in his tuxedo, but it was his expression that made my breath catch. He wasn't looking at me like a business partner, or an arrangement or a convenient solution. He was looking at me like I was the only person in the world, like I was his choice. Yeah, I whispered. I'm ready. The walk down the aisle felt both endless and far too short. I was vaguely aware of faces turning toward me, of Marina crying happy tears in the front row, of Vivian's calculating gaze. But mostly, I was aware of Theodore, his eyes never leaving mine. When I reached him, my father placed my hand in Theodore's, and I felt it, that spark, that connection, that sense of absolute rightness. "Hi," Theodore whispered, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "Hi yourself," I grinned. "Come here often?" His quiet laugh made several guests smile. "First time, actually. Thinking about making it a tradition." The officiant cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was beautiful. Traditional vows with a few personal touches we'd added. But it was the moment for our own vows that everything changed. Theodore took both my hands, his voice steady and clear. "Valentina, 3 months ago, I thought I knew what this would be. A contract, an obligation, a 3-year placeholder in both our lives." He paused, emotion flickering across his face. "I was so wrong. You walked into my life like a hurricane, stubborn, brilliant, beautiful, and absolutely refusing to be what anyone expected. You challenged me, called me out on my privilege, and somehow, impossibly, made me want to be better." My eyes were definitely watering, destroying Marina's careful makeup work. "I can't promise this will be easy," he continued. "I can't promise we won't fight or drive each other crazy. But I can promise that every day for the next 3 years, and hopefully every day after that, I will choose you. I will support your dreams, defend your vision, and love you with everything I have. Because you're not just my wife. You're my partner, my equal, my home." I was fully crying now and didn't care. "Well, now I have to follow that," I said, making everyone laugh. I squeezed his hands, finding my courage. "Theodore, I came into this thinking I was sacrificing my freedom, that I was giving up my choices, my autonomy, my future. But what I actually found was the exact opposite." I took a shaky breath. "You gave me freedom to be exactly who I am. You saw my work, my passion, my ridiculous tears at Pixar movies, and instead of asking me to change, you celebrated it. You made space for me in your life, not as decoration or accessory, but as a partner." His eyes were suspiciously bright now, too. "So I promise to challenge you when you're wrong, support you when you're right, and stand beside you through whatever comes next. 3 years, 30 years, whatever we decide, I'm all in. Because somewhere between the champagne spill and the rehearsal dinner disaster, I fell for you, the real you, and that's not something contracts can define or time limits can contain. I love you," he mouthed silently, just for me. "I love you too," I mouthed back. "By the power vested in me," the officiant said, practically beaming, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Theodore, you may kiss your bride." "Finally," Theodore murmured, pulling me close. The kiss was soft and sweet and perfect. And then he dipped me dramatically, making me laugh against his lips, while the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. When he pulled me back up, spinning me around, I caught sight of Marina ugly crying, my father genuinely smiling for the first time in months, and even Vivian looking grudgingly pleased. "Mrs. Cortez Pemberton," Theodore said, linking his arm through mine. "Shall we?" "We shall, Mr. Cortez Pemberton." As we walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, I realized something. This wasn't the end of my freedom or the death of my dreams. This was the beginning of everything. And I couldn't wait to see what came next. Married life, I discovered, was nothing like the rom-com suggested. For one thing, Theodore snored. Not loudly, but enough that I could hear it through the wall separating our bedrooms in the east wing. For another, he was a morning person, the kind who went for runs at 6 a.m. and came back disgustingly energized while I was still negotiating with my alarm clock. But the worst part? I was falling deeper in love with him every single day, and I had no idea if that was allowed. "You're overthinking again." Theodore appeared in my home office. Yes, he'd converted an entire room into my workspace, complete with drafting table and espresso machine, holding 2 coffee cups. I can hear it from downstairs. "I'm not overthinking. I'm regular thinking. There's a difference." He set a cup beside my laptop, and I caught the aroma. Black, no sugar, exactly how I liked it. Because of course he remembered. It's been 2 weeks since the wedding, Val. At some point, you're going to have to admit this is working. Working? I spun in my chair to face him. Theodore, we're living in separate wings of a mansion. We've had dinner together exactly 4 times, and I still don't know what your middle name is. Alexander. He perched on the edge of my desk, impossibly casual in jeans and a Princeton sweatshirt. What's yours? Isabel. But that's not the point. The point is, we're getting to know each other. Isn't that what married couples do? His eyes sparkled with amusement. Unless you'd prefer I just move into your bedroom and we skip all the getting to know you parts? My face flamed. That's not what You're impossible. And you're adorable when you're flustered. He stood, pressing a kiss to my forehead that sent electricity down my spine. Finish your work. I'm making dinner tonight. Your presence is requested at 7. He was gone before I could argue, leaving me with coffee and a racing heart. Dinner turned out to be homemade pasta, because apparently Theodore had spent a summer in Tuscany and learned from an actual Italian grandmother, served on the terrace overlooking the estate gardens. This is incredible, I admitted after the 3rd bite. Pride be damned. Where did you learn this? When I was 22, before Harvard Business School, I took 6 months off. Told my father I was doing a European business tour. He refilled my wine glass. Actually spent most of it working in a small restaurant in Florence learning to cook. The owner, Nonna Maria, treated me like her grandson. She didn't care about the Pemberton name or the money. She cared that I showed up on time and didn't burn the sauce. I studied him in the candlelight. You're full of surprises, Theodore Alexander Pemberton. Cortez Pemberton, he corrected with a grin. You hyphenated us, remember? I'm legally bound to your architectural genius now. Speaking of which, I pulled out my phone, showing him the email I'd received that afternoon. The community center in the Bronx? It just won the Sustainable Design Award. They're featuring it in Architectural Digest. His face lit up like I'd given him the moon. Valentina, that's amazing. Why didn't you tell me immediately? I don't know. I guess I'm still not used to having someone to tell. The admission felt vulnerable, raw. Theodore reached across the table, taking my hand. Get used to it. Every victory, every challenge, every 3 a.m. breakthrough. I want to hear about all of it. That's what this is, remember? Partnership. Even though it started as a business deal? Especially because it started as a business deal. He stood, pulling me up with him. We chose each other, Val. Past the contracts and the money and the pressure. We chose this. He was so close now, his hands on my waist, his eyes searching mine. Tell me I'm not imagining this. Tell me you feel it too. I feel it. My voice was barely a whisper. It terrifies me, but I feel it. Good. His smile was soft, genuine. Because I'd really like to kiss my wife now. Really kiss her. Not for cameras or guests or appearances. Just because I want to. Then what are you waiting for? The kiss was nothing like our wedding kiss, that had been sweet, appropriate, PG-rated. This was fire and want, and 2 weeks of restraint finally breaking. His hands tangled in my hair, mine gripping his shirt, and suddenly separate bedrooms seemed like the worst idea in the history of marriage. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Theodore rested his forehead against mine. I should tell you something, he said quietly. The 3-year contract? I asked my father to destroy it. 2 days after the wedding. My heart stopped. What? I told him this marriage was real, and I wasn't going to treat it like a business merger with an expiration date. He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. Which means you're stuck with me, Valentina Cortez Pemberton, for as long as you'll have me. Theodore, that's insane. What if I want out? Then I'll sign whatever papers you need and I'll walk away. But it won't be because some contract said our time was up. His voice was fierce. It'll be because you chose to leave, not because you were obligated to stay. I was crying again, damn him. You absolute idiot. You beautiful, ridiculous idiot. Is that a yes to being stuck with me? That's a yes to figuring this out together. No expiration dates. No predetermined endings. I kissed him again, softer this time. Just us. Just us, he agreed. Although, full disclosure, I'm still terrible at loading the dishwasher, and I may have already broken your favorite coffee mug. I laughed through my tears. The blue one from Colombia? I'll buy you 10 new ones. I don't want 10 new ones. I want you to be more careful with my stuff. Deal. He kissed my nose. Now, about these separate bedrooms. We're keeping them, I said firmly, even as my treacherous body disagreed. I like my space. And you're snoring. I don't snore. You absolutely do. Prove it. I grinned wickedly. Fine. Tonight you sleep in my room. We'll record it. His eyes darkened. You're playing a dangerous game, Mrs. Cortez Pemberton. I'm an architect. I calculated all the load-bearing walls before I made my move. He laughed, loud and genuine, and swept me up in his arms. God, I love you. I love you too, I admitted, finally, completely. Even though you're carrying me like some Victorian novel and it's completely unnecessary. Humor me. I've been dreaming about this for weeks. As he carried me inside, past the formal rooms and the expensive art and the life we were building together, I realized something. This wasn't the fairy tale ending. This was the messy, complicated, absolutely perfect beginning. And the best part? We were writing it together. 6 months into marriage, and I'd learned that happiness made you vulnerable in ways you never anticipated. I should have known something was wrong when Augustus requested a meeting at Pemberton Holdings on a Friday afternoon. Theodore had been tense all morning, his usual easy confidence replaced by something darker. You don't have to come, he said for the 3rd time as we rode the elevator to the executive floor. Whatever this is, I can handle it. We're partners, remember? No separate battles anymore. I squeezed his hand. Besides, your father doesn't scare me. That was a lie. Augustus Pemberton terrified me. But Theodore didn't need to know that. Augustus was waiting in his office, and he wasn't alone. A woman in her 60s sat across from him, her designer suit and calculating eyes screaming, "Corporate lawyer." "Theodore! Valentina!" Augustus gestured to the empty chairs. "Please, sit. This is Margaret Chen, head of our legal department." My stomach dropped. "Dad, what's this about?" Theodore's voice was carefully controlled. "It's about your marriage." Augustus steepled his fingers, and I recognized the expression. It was the same one he'd worn when he'd first proposed this arrangement. More specifically, about the terms we all agreed to. "We destroyed that contract," Theodore said flatly. "You agreed." "I agreed to tear up the original contract, yes, but that doesn't negate the debt your wife's father still owes this company." Augustus smiled, and it was all teeth. $15 million to be precise, plus interest. The world tilted sideways. "You said the debt was forgiven," I managed. "That was the whole point. The debt was deferred upon your marriage to my son, conditional upon the marriage lasting at least 3 years and producing appropriate results." Margaret slid a document across the desk. "This is the actual agreement your father signed. Page 7, Clause 12. I grabbed the papers with shaking hands, scanning desperately. There it was. In legal language, I'd been too panicked to process 6 months ago. Debt forgiveness, conditional upon maintenance of marital status for minimum term of 3 years and demonstration of good faith efforts to integrate families. "This is insane," Theodore stood abruptly. "You can't hold a debt over their heads like this." "I can, and I am." Augustus remained infuriatingly calm. "You see, son, I've been receiving some concerning reports. You've been making plans, haven't you? Plans that don't include Pemberton Holdings." Theodore's silence was damning. "You're thinking about leaving again," Augustus continued. "Going back to that doctor's program, dragging my daughter-in-law along to some impoverished country where her considerable talents will be wasted. Her talents are hers to use however she chooses. Theodore's fist slammed on the desk. And yes, I've been talking to Doctors Without Borders. They want me back. They need experienced administrators in their African programs, and Valentina. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. She's been designing sustainable housing prototypes for refugee camps. Incredible work that could actually save lives instead of just making rich people richer. My breath caught. He'd known about my secret project, the one I'd been working on late at night, too afraid to mention because it seemed so impossible. How touching. Augustus's voice dripped acid. But here's reality. If Theodore leaves Pemberton Holdings within the next 2.5 years, I'm calling in the Cortez debt immediately. Your father's company will fold, Valentina. Every employee will lose their jobs, and you'll have nothing. The room spun. This was the trap. The real trap. Not the marriage that had become the best part of my life. The trap was thinking we could ever truly escape. There has to be another way, I heard myself say. We could pay back the debt ourselves. With what? Margaret's smile was pitying. You'd need to liquidate everything you both own, and it still wouldn't be enough. The interest alone. Then I'll stay. Theodore's voice was hollow. I'll stay at Pemberton Holdings. I'll be the son you want. Just leave Valentina and her father alone. No. The word exploded from me. Absolutely not. Theodore, you were miserable before.
You were dying inside that corporate prison, and you think I'd survive watching your father lose everything? Watching you blame yourself? He cupped my face, and I saw the resignation in his eyes. This is my choice, Val. Let me make it. How noble. Augustus stood, adjusting his cufflinks. I'll expect you back in the office Monday morning, Theodore. Full time. No more of this humanitarian nonsense. He looked at me. And Valentina, I trust you'll support your husband's decision.
After all, you wouldn't want to be responsible for destroying 100 families, would you? The guilt was a knife between my ribs, sharp and precise. We left in silence, Theodore's hand tight around mine as we walked through the building that suddenly felt like a mausoleum. In the parking garage, surrounded by expensive cars that represented everything we both wanted to escape, I finally broke. This is my fault. Tears streamed down my face. If I hadn't agreed to marry you, if I'd just let the company fail, then 100 people would be unemployed, your father would be destroyed, and I'd be stuck in that office alone instead of having you. Theodore pulled me into his arms. Val, listen to me. This isn't over. We'll find a way. How? I pulled back, anger mixing with despair. He's got us trapped. You stay and lose yourself, or we leave and I lose everything. Those are the only options. Then we make a third option. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. We're architects of our own lives, remember? We design solutions to impossible problems. This is just another impossible problem. With a $15 million price tag. With a $15 million price tag, he agreed. But we have something my father doesn't. What's that? He smiled, and it was fierce and wild and full of hope. We have each other, and that's worth more than all his money combined. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But as we drove home to our beautiful prison of a mansion, I couldn't shake the feeling that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes the world won. That night, lying in Theodore's arms, we'd long since abandoned the separate bedroom charade. I made a decision. A terrible, necessary decision that I knew would break both our hearts. But that was the thing about love. Real love. Sometimes saving the person you loved meant letting them go, even if it destroyed you in the process. I left at dawn. Not forever, I wasn't that dramatic, but long enough to do what needed to be done. Theodore was still asleep, one arm stretched across my side of the bed like he was afraid I'd disappear. He wasn't wrong to worry. I left a note on the pillow. Trust me. I love you. I'm fixing this. Then I called Marina, packed a bag, and drove to the one person who might actually have answers. Vivian Pemberton's townhouse in the Upper East Side was exactly as intimidating as expected. All marble and mirrors, and the kind of art that belonged in museums. She answered the door herself, surprisingly casual in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater. "Valentina," her eyebrows rose. "It's 7 a.m. I need your help." The words cost me everything. "Please." Something shifted in her expression. She stepped aside. "Come in." 10 minutes later, we sat in her pristine kitchen, expensive coffee between us, and I laid out everything. Augustus's trap, the hidden contract clause, Theodore's dreams, my impossible choice. "He's going to sacrifice everything for me," I finished, my voice breaking. "And I can't let him do that. But I also can't let my father lose the company. So I need to know, is there any way to beat Augustus at his own game?" Vivian was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those sharp eyes. Then she smiled. Actually, smiled. "You really love my son. More than anything." "Good." She stood, walking to a wall safe I hadn't noticed. "Because Augustus thinks he's the only one who can play chess with people's lives. He forgets that I've been married to him for 40 years. I know every move before he makes it." She pulled out a file folder, thick with documents. "This is everything, every shady deal, every corner cut, every tax loophole Augustus has exploited to build his empire." She met my eyes. "Including the original contract he made with your father. The real one, before the lawyers rewrote it." My hands shook as I opened the folder. There it was, the original agreement, with no 3-year clause, no conditional forgiveness. Just a straightforward debt for marriage arrangement that would be forgiven upon the wedding. "He changed it," I whispered. "After I agreed, but before my father signed. Augustus always has an insurance policy." Vivienne's voice was ice. "He did the same thing to me 35 years ago. Promised me freedom if I gave him an heir. Then changed the terms after Theodore was born." Her smile was bitter. "I've been collecting evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment to use it." "Why now? Why help us?" "Because Theodore is the only good thing I ever created, and Augustus has been slowly killing him for years." She gripped my hand. "And because you're the first person who's ever fought for him instead of just accepting that he's Augustus's property." Hope bloomed in my chest, fragile and fierce. "What do we do?" Vivian's smile turned predatory. "We rebuild the entire structure from the ground up. Isn't that what you architects do?" By noon, we had a plan. By evening, we were executing it. Marina handled the media contacts, because of course she had connections at the Times. Vivian arranged a board meeting at Pemberton Holdings for Monday morning. And I spent 6 hours with lawyers, going through every document, building our case. Theodore called 17 times. I didn't answer. This had to be finished first. At midnight, I finally came home. Theodore was pacing the foyer, still in his clothes from yesterday, looking like he'd aged a decade. "Where the hell have you been?" He grabbed my shoulders. "I woke up and you were gone. Your note made no sense. You wouldn't answer your phone." His voice cracked. "Val, I thought you'd left me." "Never." I kissed him hard, pouring every ounce of love and certainty into it. "I was fixing it. Fixing everything." "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the email from the New York Times. The headline read, "Pemberton Holdings under investigation. Contract fraud, tax evasion, and the debt that started it all." Theodore's eyes widened as he scrolled. This is everything. Every dirty deal he's ever made." He looked up at me. "How did you—" "Your mother." I grinned at his shocked expression. "Turns out, hell hath no fury like a woman who's been playing the long game for 40 years. She's testifying to the board on Monday. With this evidence, Augustus will be forced to step down as CEO. And the debt? Voided. The original contract he made with my father was legally binding." The amendments he added after were fraud. My lawyers are filing a motion Monday morning. I took his hands. We're free, Theodore. Actually free. He stared at me like I'd just handed him the world. Then he laughed, loud and disbelieving and full of joy. You're incredible. You know that? Absolutely incredible. I know. I was crying and laughing simultaneously. But here's the thing. I didn't do it so you could leave Pemberton Holdings. I did it so you could choose. Really choose. If you want to go to Africa with Doctors Without Borders, I'm coming with you. If you want to stay and rebuild the company into something ethical, I'm staying too. Whatever you choose, we choose together. Together, he repeated, and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When we finally broke apart, he was grinning. I have a confession. Should I be worried? I've been talking to some people. The board members who actually give a damn about ethics. He pulled out his own phone, showing me emails. If Augustus steps down, they want me to take over as CEO. Not because of my last name, but because I've been quietly building relationships, proving I'm not just his puppet. But he looked at me seriously. I only want it if I can do it right. No more exploitation, no more cutting corners. Real sustainable business practices. And I need a chief sustainability officer who specializes in ethical architecture and community development. My heart stopped. Theodore, the salary is excellent, the benefits are outstanding, and the boss is incredibly handsome. His grin widened. What do you say, Mrs. Cortez Pemberton? Want to redesign a corporate empire with me? We can still do the humanitarian work, I said quickly. The refugee housing, the medical programs, we'll fund them, properly, through a foundation we'll create together. He pulled me close. Valentina, we can do both. We can build something that makes money and makes a difference. We just have to be brave enough to try. You know what? I married a stranger to save my father's company. I smiled up at him. Brave is kind of my specialty. Mine too. He kissed my forehead, my nose, my lips. So what do you say? Ready to change the world? With you? I wrapped my arms around his neck. Always. And there, in the foyer of the mansion that had once felt like a prison but now felt like home, we kissed as the sun rose on Monday morning. The morning Augustus Pemberton's empire would crumble. The morning ours would begin. 3 years later, plus forever. The community center in Nairobi wasn't fancy. No marble floors, no crystal chandeliers, no pretentious art installations. Just clean lines, sustainable materials, and solar panels glinting in the African sun. Exactly as I'd designed it. Mrs. Cortez Pemberton. A little girl named Amara ran up to me, her smile brighter than the equatorial sunshine. Come see, the garden is growing. I let her drag me to the rooftop garden where local families grew vegetables, my heart swelling at the sight of tomato plants thriving in the raised beds I'd designed with the community's input. It's perfect, Amara. I crouched down to her level. You've been taking good care of it. Just like you taught us. She hugged me fiercely before running back to her friends, strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind. You know, Theodore's voice was warm against my ear. When I imagined us doing humanitarian work together, I pictured more jungles and less architectural genius. I leaned back against him, watching the sunset paint the Nairobi skyline in shades of gold and amber. Can't help being good at what I do. No, you really can't. He spun me around, and I was struck, as I always was, by how different he looked now. Less polished, more real. The designer suits had given way to casual button-downs and jeans. The corporate stress had melted into genuine contentment. Dr. Amandi says the medical clinic we built is running at full capacity. They're asking if we can fund an expansion. The Pemberton Cortez Foundation can absolutely make that happen. I grinned. How many lives is that now? That we've helped? Stopped counting at 50,000. His smile was soft, proud. But who's keeping track? Marina is. She's literally keeping a spreadsheet for the annual report. He laughed. That full-bodied sound I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago and fell deeper for every single day. Of course she is. Speaking of which, she texted. She and David are engaged. Finally! I pulled out my phone, already typing congratulations. It only took him 3 years to propose. I was starting to worry. Unlike me, who proposed after knowing you for 3 months. Theodore's eyebrow arched. In a business arrangement orchestrated by my father? That was different. That was... I paused, searching for the right word. Fate, he supplied. Destiny. The universe conspiring to give me the love of my life disguised as a corporate merger. You're such a romantic. Only for you. He kissed me, soft and sweet, as the sun dipped below the horizon. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket, not a ring box, something flatter, and handed it to me with slightly shaking hands. Inside were 2 tickets, New York to Nairobi, one way. Theodore. My voice caught. I know we plan to go back to New York next month. Take over as permanent CEO of Pemberton Holdings, you as Chief Sustainability Officer, the whole corporate empire thing. He took my hands. But watching you here, seeing how alive you are designing buildings that actually matter, working with communities instead of corporations. He swallowed hard. I don't want to go back. Not permanently. I want to stay here. Build more clinics, more schools, more community centers. I want to wake up every morning and know we're making a real difference. Tears blurred my vision. But the company will survive without me. We have amazing board members now, ethical leadership, sustainable practices in place. My mother's been running operations brilliantly since Augustus left. He cupped my face. Val, I spent 33 years doing what everyone else wanted. I want to spend the rest of my life doing what we want. Together. You're sure? I had to ask. You're really sure? I've never been more sure of anything. His smile could have powered the solar panels. Except maybe marrying you. That was my best decision ever. I kissed him through my tears, laughing and crying simultaneously. Yes, God, yes. Let's stay. Let's build a life here. There's one more thing. He pulled another box from his pocket, this one definitely a ring box. I know we're already married, but that was arranged by our fathers, signed in lawyers' offices, witnessed by people who bet on us failing. He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a small, ethically sourced diamond. I want to propose to you again, the right way, because I choose you, Valentina. Every single day, I choose you. He dropped to one knee right there on the rooftop, the Nairobi skyline behind him. Amara and her friends watching wide-eyed from across the garden. Valentina Isabel Cortez Pemberton, will you marry me? Again? For real this time. No contracts, no conditions, no expiration dates. Just you and me and whatever adventure comes next? You absolute idiot. I was fully sobbing now, not caring who saw. We're already married. So is that a yes? That's a yes, yes, yes! I pulled him up, kissing him as our audience of children erupted in cheers and applause. He slid the ring onto my finger, the right hand this time, because my left already held his grandmother's ring from our business arrangement wedding that had turned into the real thing. 2 rings, I said, admiring them. One for the marriage we were forced into, one for the marriage we chose. Perfect symmetry. He kissed my forehead. Speaking of which, I should probably mention Dr. Omondi asked if we design and fund a maternity ward for the clinic. Absolutely. I already have sketches. Of course you do. He laughed. And, completely unrelated question. How do you feel about the name Amara? For a girl? My heart stopped. Theodore. Or we could wait a few more years. No pressure. He looked almost shy. I see you with these kids, and I think about a little girl with your eyes and your brilliant mind, maybe my terrible sense of humor. Yes, I cut him off with a kiss. To all of it. The maternity ward, the baby, the forever. All of it. All of it, he agreed, spinning me around as the stars began appearing in the darkening sky. 5 years after that. The house we built in Nairobi wasn't a mansion. It was warm and bright and filled with laughter, with solar panels on the roof and a garden that Amara, age 4, and her baby brother Marcus, age 2, loved to help tend. I sat on the porch, watching Theodore teach Marcus how to kick a soccer ball, while Amara showed me her latest drawing. A building, because of course it was. "It's a school, Mama," she explained seriously, her little face so much like Theodore's it made my heart ache. "With lots of windows for light and a big garden on the roof like our house. It's perfect, sweetheart." I pulled her onto my lap. "You're going to be an amazing architect someday." "Like you?" "Better than me." My phone buzzed. A text from Marina, now living in Boston with her husband David and their twins. Marina, annual. "I told you so," reminder. I called it. From day one. Fake marriage, real feelings. "You owe me so much wine when you visit next month." Me. "You're insufferable." Marina. "And you're disgustingly happy. It's adorable. Love you, babe." Me. "Love you too. Thank you for everything." Marina. "That's what best friends are for. Now go kiss your husband. He's looking at you like you hung the moon again." I looked up. She was right. Theodore was watching me with that expression that still made my stomach flip after 8 years together, like I was the most remarkable thing he'd ever seen. "What?" I called out, "just thinking about how lucky I am." He jogged over, Marcus on his hip, and pressed a kiss to my temple. The terrified woman who agreed to marry me to save her father's company turned out to be the love of my life. What are the odds? Astronomical, I agreed, pulling him down for a proper kiss while our children made exaggerated gagging noises. "Gross," Amara declared. "Parents shouldn't kiss." "Oh, they absolutely should," Theodore countered, kissing me again, "especially when they're this in love." That night, after the kids were asleep, Theodore and I sat on our porch watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "Giving up Pemberton Holdings? The money, the power, the penthouse in Manhattan?" "Every single day," he said, and my heart lurched before I saw his grin. "I'm kidding. Val, I regret nothing. This..." He gestured at our modest house, the community we'd built, the life we'd created. "This is everything I never knew I wanted. You gave me permission to want it." We gave each other permission. I laced my fingers through his. The scared architect and the trapped heir, figuring it out together. Not scared anymore? Terrified, I admitted. Every day I'm terrified something will take this away, that I'll wake up and it'll have been a dream. Then I'll remind you, it's real. He kissed my knuckles. Every day if I have to. This is our life, Valentina. The one we chose, the one we built. No contracts, no conditions. Just us, I finished. Just us, he agreed. For the next 3 years. I laughed. Just 3? And every 3 years after that. His smile was pure sunshine. I figure we should renew our vows every 3 years. Remind ourselves that we're choosing this, choosing each other. I choose you, I whispered. Today, tomorrow, 3 years from now, 30 years from now, every version of you, every version of us. I choose all of it. Good. He pulled me close and I settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Because you're stuck with me, Mrs. Cortez Pemberton. For better or worse, richer or poorer. In mansions or modest houses. In Manhattan or Nairobi. In business arrangements or real marriages. Till death do us part, we finished together. And somewhere in the distance, I could have sworn I heard the universe laughing, satisfied with its own matchmaking. After all, what were the odds? A forced marriage turning into forever. A business deal becoming true love. An architect and an heir building something neither of them planned, but both of them needed. Pretty astronomical. But then again, the best love stories always are. The end.